when we're all done with it.
In fact, yeah, I mean, Charlotte asked one year.
Yeah, I mean, when we're all done with it, it'd be nice to have it, and then I could just download it on here and I have it all year.
PDF right now.
Well, let's wait till we get, there's gonna be so many changes, let's wait. Yeah. Okay, I need one more thing.
You know what? Let me grab that.
Yeah, I know. Right, this is something we should all be discussing. Yeah, I mean, he tells me we're tabling it, he says we're voting no, that to me sounds like we're all wishy-washy. You know what I mean? Is this all here because of the police? Is this what they follow? Well, what is it mostly? Is that Russ Brazili?
Scott?
Hey. What's the guy with the King's name?
If you want it back.
Oh.
Congratulations to you too. I know you are. I can tell. My wife goes, have fun tonight.
I thought maybe we were doing something. 4 more years. Over here.
I've been celebrating for a week.
Right.
Congratulations,
Thanks,
big guy.
sir.
I didn't get to see you that night. Made our life easier for 2 more years. My life's gonna be easier for 2 more years.
To hell. You're not ducking out.
No, I'll probably be running again. I'll probably run again. I can't put no one else in here.
Okay.
I'll make all the rest of the people to talk.
That's okay. It's all good. We ready?
Pittsburgh's defense looking good.
Yeah.
I'm a Vikings fan. I love my Vikings last night.
I was, you're a Vikings fan? Surprised.
Thank you. I was looking for that.
Where'd that come from?
I've always been.
Well, yeah, I saw something. I didn't print it.
Page 51, that is not
Hey, you're a
27.
big guy. Hey.
That's where it is. Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh,
Change your table of contents.
Okay.
Change your table of contents.
I know where it is.
Okay. Or make them redo it since. And it should say
Save the
2020
paper.
at the top, too.
Save the paper. 51.
51 of 64.
we good?
No, just the first 2.
First 2 pages. Yeah. Give me your old ones. I'll toss them in the waste paper can. There you go.
There
Okay.
you go, big guy.
Okay.
Nothing coming that I need to know.
Yes, you did.
If you didn't know better, you think there's a sewer issue again.
You ready?
Oh, God. Don't let my blood pressure go up to the roof. This is good, though.
I call the Norton City Council meeting to order for Monday, November 11th, 2019. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And during our moment of silent prayer, if you could just keep Emma Fouts and her family in your prayers this evening. She's had quite a battle, and she's fighting on, and just please keep that in your prayers. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Be seated.
Yeah, I agree. Right. I was wondering why. Gee, I wonder who these people
Kind of full tonight, so. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Gaynor?
Here.
Mr. McClone?
Here.
Mr. Carratt?
Here.
Mr. Towsley?
Here.
Ms. Whipke? Here. Mr. Pelot?
Here.
Mr. Kernan?
Here. So normally we would go to communications from the public, but we're actually going to move right to the commendation for the police officers. Chief D'Alessandro.
Sure. Thank you very much. Glad to see a packed house. Right now, we've got a structure fire going on 261, so I'm glad that the officers that were on duty were able to break free and come out here tonight. Mayor Zita, council members, and special guests, thank you for allowing me the opportunity tonight to recognize all of the safety forces that were involved in the Barber Road storage ambush that took place on October 3rd, 2017. This recognition is long overdue. Unfortunately, due to the lengthy adjudication process of this case that included 3 different prosecutors, we were advised to wait prior to speaking publicly about this case. I do want to make a disclaimer. It's been about 2 years and a month, so if I forget to mention somebody tonight, I apologize. On October 3rd, 2017, our Swisscom dispatchers received a call from the manager of the Barber Road storage, stating that her employees reported to her that they witnessed a suspicious acting male walking around the property, dressed in black ninja-style clothing, and was seen carrying a rifle and placing ammunition around the complex. As Norton police officers arrived, they learned the office manager, along with 3 other people, were trapped in a rear office in the rear of the complex and scared to come out. Officers witnessed loaded magazines in the ravine area, and thankfully, because we have a great working relationship with our surrounding communities, not to mention the fact that the Swisscom dispatchers are in the same room, from the 2 other surrounding agencies, Barberton officers arrived on scene to assist the Norton officers. Earlier that day, a dangerous individual went to the Barber Road storage. Based on his actions that day, we know he began to calculate a plan to cause harm to numerous individuals that included the office manager, her husband, a maintenance worker, along with his 2-year-old daughter, and every responding police officer. Surveillance footage showed a chilling image of an assault rifle strapped to his back while walking through the compound of the storage facility methodically and in a calculated fashion, placing fully loaded magazines that included a high-capacity drum and boxes of ammunition throughout the compound. Because of this, we believe he did this in preparation for a long gun battle with police officers as they arrived on scene. Thankfully, we are here tonight praising the actions of everyone involved. The suspect was originally charged with 4 counts of attempted murder with gun specs, and he later pled guilty to 2 counts of attempted murder with gun specs and is currently serving a 19-year prison sentence. I would first like to point out how grateful we are that this incident had a positive outcome. This outcome, we believe, are due to several factors. The first being that we have a very close relationship with the city of Barberton. That night, without hesitation, 2 Barberton officers were sent to assist us. This is a small microcosm of the level of cooperation and teamwork that our officers have with one another from all departments around Summit County. This relationship is founded on their training together in a program called ALERT, which stands for Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training. ALERT was on full display that night. The second factor that night was that this department has been given the proper funding for training and equipment. For that, we thank you, our elected officials. I would first like to recognize the responding officers from that night. All of these officers were wearing body cameras, and the videos are terrifying. Officers John Carneth, Cody Mitchin, Jason Sams, Marcus Shirey, Barberton officers Ed Simmons and Kevin Landels acted with courage, honor, and valor when they were fired upon and stop the suspect from carrying out his calculated plan. I would like to ask these individuals to come forward to receive your commendation, and I'd like to ask the mayor to read the commendation.
I'll read one. Award of Valor. This acknowledges that the name of the patrol officer has been recognized for displaying great courage in the face of danger on October 3rd, 2017. You risked your own personal safety for the safety of others. In doing so, your actions prevented tragedy during an attack from a gunman using an assault rifle during an ambush on police and civilians. Awarded this 23rd day of September 2019. So we have Patrolman John Carnew. Thank you, sir. Cody Mitchell. Cody Mitchell. Thank you, sir. Patrolman Jason Sands. Thank you, sir. Patrolman Martin Shutter. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Patrolman Ed Simmons. Thank you. Patrolman Ed Williams. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Please join me in commending the officer. For the remainder of the presentation, I'll ask that you stand when I call your name for those safety members. As the incident was unfolding, numerous off-duty Norton police officers were contacted to respond to the active scene. These officers did not hesitate to drop what they were doing in their home life and rush to the scene. They walked onto a possible active shooting situation, not knowing who or where the active shooter was located. These officers include Patrolman Zachary Birch, Patrolman Chris Bessie, Detective Ryan Connell, Sergeant Brett McShane, Sergeant Burnett, Captain Larry Lane, K-9 Officer Ryan Seeker, and Patrolman Sean Connor. Officer Connor was a good example of service before self that night. This officer immediately responded to the active scene once he heard of the incident without being asked. Please join me in commending these officers. Next, we would like to recognize our Swisscom dispatchers. Dispatchers often spend their entire shifts dealing with people in the most panicked moments of their lives. Dispatchers serve behind the scenes. They receive a call and send police, fire, and EMS to their calls with little to no recognition and often not knowing the outcome of certain calls. On the night of October 3rd, 2017, our dispatchers worked collectively like a well-oiled machine. When I was en route to Barber Road, I called in and spoke with lead dispatcher Mike Emerson. He briefed me on the incident, advised me that they had 5 dispatchers on duty, and we made the decision to remove him from handling calls, and he was my lifeline, an immediate contact person. He and I had many conversations that night, and every order that was given to him, he acknowledged, repeated it back to me, and he got it done. Dispatcher Farrar was assigned as the Norton dispatcher that night and did a tremendous job. Dispatchers Tristan Lyko, Kim Price, and Sandy Bittner also stepped up and took on answering literally hundreds of calls. When the incident was over that night, I immediately responded back to Swisscom, and I can tell you, in my experience, that the look on these dispatchers' faces, it was telling. They were relieved that no officers were injured, and I stand here proud of the Swisscom team. We all need to realize how fortunate we are that 3 surrounding agencies have dispatchers in the same building. So when incidents like this happen, we don't even need to ask for mutual aid. It's automatically sent. So please join me in commending these dispatchers. We would also like to recognize our Norton Fire Department. The on-duty firefighters that night were Dave Davis, Travis Krieger, William Rhodes, Jesse Brown, Jeff Kuykendall, and Joe Kunkel. These firefighters were tasked in rendering first aid to the suspect and transporting him to the hospital. Firefighter Dave Davis responded to the scene shortly after I arrived with a thermal imaging camera that we used to make sure that the suspect did not circle around and ambush officers on the scene. This piece of equipment wasn't asked for. He took it upon himself to drive it down to us. So please join me in commending these firefighters. We would like to recognize members of the Barberton, Norton, and New Franklin SWAT team that arrived and located the suspect and took him into custody, along with everyone that came in and had specific duties as to the investigation of this case. Some of the Norton officers that have already been recognized are also members of the SWAT team, but we have from Barberton Police Sergeant Mike Casey, Jerry Antonucci, Paul Lorella, Terry Mullinax, Marty Eberhardt, Antoinette DeSimone, Greg Stalder, Jeff Hagan from the New Franklin Police Department, and we also have Chief Vince Morber. I could tell you that Summit County Police Chiefs, we all are pretty a close, tight-knit family. He called me right away along with several other chiefs. He came in to help us out, and it was nice kind of being able to run things past another chief in that time of need. So please join me in commending these officers as well. And lastly, I would like to recognize all the agencies that night that supported us. We have Ohio BCI&I. This was the group that came out and investigated the officer-involved shooting for us. Ohio State Patrol, I don't know if you guys know this, but they sent us 3 state troopers. I had requested, because we were losing a lot of daylight, a helicopter. Within 45 minutes of me arriving on scene, we had a helicopter that came from Columbus with, I think it's called night vision cameras, and really lit up the scene for us. We had members of the U.S. Marshals, New Franklin Police Department, the Barberton Municipal Court Prosecutor's Office helped us that night with the investigation, ATF, Summit County Prosecutor's Office, the FBI, Summit County Safety Forces Support Center. These are the individuals that can come in when we have an officer-involved shooting, and they kind of do a debriefing with all the officers that were involved. We had members of the Akron Police Department, Bath Police Department, Copley Police Department, and Doylestown Police Department. So please help me in thanking these individuals as well. And that pretty much concludes my presentation. I do want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart. You guys did a great job that night. You know, a lot of times when we bring individuals up in to swear them in, we talk about being a family, and it's true. We are a family, whether it Norton Police Department, the Norton Fire Department, our Swisscom family, and our family from Barberton. So thank you.
Chief, before they leave, we want them up front here.
Sure, absolutely. So would everybody like to come up forward? We'll take a group picture.
Don't be shy.
No.
Enough room.
McShane.
Jason, get off your tiptoes.
So while everyone is leaving or getting back to their seats and stuff, I just want to say I am very, very proud of our safety forces. There's not much more to say than that. Than you guys and ladies are just the best. I'm proud of it, and I thank you. Thank you,
Mr. Crutch.
Mr. Fowler.
So as sorry, I'm loud, but as the chief commended everyone, and the chief did a fabulous job as well as coordinating that. He didn't commend himself, but he did a great job, and I think the training and his leadership shows that what that can do for a city and a department, and he should be commended as well.
Mr. Tousley, did you want to say something?
Mr. Fowler basically got it. I just want to make sure, in a situation like that, you don't get to take volunteers. Who gets to go? It's whoever's on the clock. And the part of the video I saw, what stuck out to me immediately was the lack of
Hesitation.
surprise or panic on the officer's part, and that speaks to training. And really, the whole department, I think, under the chief's leadership, should be commended.
Thank you. Thank you.
I gave a presentation at our Citizens Academy. I think some of you came. I still have that presentation downstairs, so if any of you ever want to see it, you can give me a call or stop in, and I'll show it to you. It's got some pretty good video in it as well. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thanks again, guys.
All right, thank you. We will then move back to communications from the public. We have a number of communications from the public, so that when your name is called, please come forward, give your name and address. You will have 5 minutes to speak. So let me get my timer up here.
Just another minute.
And then, we'll wait until it's a little quieter. We'll hold off on the public hearing till after the communications from the public. Yeah. So there is a public hearing this evening, but we're going to hold off on that until after the communications from the public. So, thank you. Right. And you'll have an opportunity to speak at the public hearing if you wish to. You can speak at communications from the public and the public hearing, but you will have an opportunity in the public hearing to also speak, just to let you know. All right. Mark Safran.
Mark Safran. My address is 126 Windsor Circle in Aurora. I'm a business partner with David Wells, who's also here tonight, at Safe Harbor, which is on Greenwich Road. One of the addresses is 4480. I've met you all before. Good evening to the council members, to the rest of the folks from the community. We would like to discuss 4 things tonight. Bring you up to date where we are on the status of our conditional use permit, what actions we've taken to date to become compliant within this community, what we hope to accomplish in the community in the future, and what benefits can we bring to this community. So first, we filed, as you all know, and you have a conditional use permit in front of you for us tonight. Our attorney on Wednesday received a mailing from Justin Markey, your attorney for the city, suggesting that the conditional use permit was not the correct permit that we should have applied for. and wanted to know if we were willing to withdraw our conditional use permit request. We are more than happy to do that. We still would like to know, and there's still communication going back and forth between our attorney and your legal counsel as to what the right permit should be. There were multiple different zonings for this property. There are multiple different records in the state. So as we have tried from the beginning, and again, let me state, if we've made any missteps, if we've done anything improperly, both Dave and I really want to appeal to you that that was never our intention. We will continue to seek whatever it is that this community wants us to do to have the right permits and the right standing in the community. To date, I've met with your police chief, I've met with your fire chief. We've discussed a variety of different concerns. One of the concerns that has come up in the past was, do we do background checks for these residents that come to us? Our tenants all have background checks. They're all randomly drug tested. We can attest to anything that you would like to know. All of that was submitted in our conditional use package in front of the Zoning and Planning Committee. I will stop at the end and ask if there are any questions that you would like me to address, and anything that comes up that I haven't addressed, David will address at the end of the evening. We also hope to engage this community with the efforts that we've undertaken. We are increasing our board to 7 members. We've asked for 2 members from the community. We've had many, many requests to serve on our board. We're grateful for that. We do know that there are some members of this community that are concerned about us, that they're concerned about having alcoholics and drug addicts in the community. We're also starting a 5-member advisory committee that will be made entirely comprised from members of this community. I know that we have some council members that are concerned about this. We'd love to have you on the advisory committee so you're part of the process, that you can understand exactly what we're doing. In a public records request, we did find that, and this is just from your own records in the city, because I know that there's concern that we're bringing in addicts and alcoholics. Well, from the period of January 1st of 2017 through May 14th of 2019, the police had to respond to 57 instances of drug-related activity. The fire department also had to be called. The EMS had to be called. I have the statistics if you want them. They were compiled from your records. We did have a death from an overdose, and there were multiple members of the community that had to receive Narcan. We also have from the a different period, the period of January 1st, 2018 through October 11th of 2019, there were 187 alcohol-related instances in Norton. There were breathalyzers, 54 examples. There was driving under the influence. There were 78 examples of driving under the influence with either drugs or alcohol. And again, I have all of the statistics. I'm not going to read everything that we have here. This problem is endemic. It's around every city, every community. Norton isn't immune to this. Our hope is becoming part of this community. Folks that are suffering with the disease of addiction and alcoholism can come to our facility. They can see what we're doing. They can see the men that are rehabilitating their lives. As I've said in the past, my sobriety date is December 12, 2012. I will be celebrating my 7th year of sobriety. I was a productive member of society before. I'm a more productive member of society since. I'm proud of my journey. I'm proud of this facility. I welcome anyone in council, anyone in this community to come, talk to the guys, meet our folks, and that's the influence we want to have in this community. Our guys will be out raking leaves and shoveling snow if someone in this community so requests. These are good men that are trying to rehabilitate their lives. I hope that you can look past any mistakes that we may have made. That was never our intention. Those of you that have gotten to know myself and have gotten to know Dave know of what we're trying to accomplish here. So, again, anything that I've omitted, I apologize. And if there's any questions for me before I sit down, and you'll hear from other folks from the community, I'll be happy to entertain them.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. President.
Ms. Whipke?
Thank you. I had specifically asked about criminal background checks And what you submitted was strictly your policy, which stated basically that the background, any criminal background checks were performed by someone else, if indeed they were performed. So, but you just keep saying, now you're done saying background checks.
We perform background checks. We check every resident before they're admitted into the facility. They have a full battery of psychological tests by the treatment centers, and then we do criminal background checks. We will not admit anyone into our facility that either A, has a sexual offense in the past, nor if they have a violent criminal record. Most of the gentlemen, many of the gentlemen, as we have in your own community, have had a DUI, maybe serving some time in the past because of their intoxication. But those are the only folks that we have on our property. Anyone that has a violent criminal record is not admitted onto Safe Harbor.
Then maybe I should be asking specifically what is a violent criminal history in your ideas.
Weapons charge, abuse, physical abuse of another human being, sexual offense, rape. Those would be criminal violent charges. If there's something that we are not screening for and the city would like us to do additional background checks that are specific to the community, we'll be happy to undertake those. But I can tell you today, we've never had a violent criminal in our property.
Robbery using a handgun?
Robbery using a handgun would not be permitted onto Safe Harbor.
And again, what you submitted to us was your policy, and wasn't the policy as to, they come to you already criminally background checked, and you're just going by what
We
they told
do
you.
our own background checks.
Oh,
We
now
don't, we do not take, every individual has an assessment for mental stability and for drug and alcohol recovery.
Right.
That is done by the treatment center. We perform the criminal background check, what we just talked about. If we see that on the record, we will not admit those folks to the facility. We do our own assessment.
So you're doing the actual criminal background
Correct.
checks?
Correct. And again, Charlotte, if you'd like to join our advisory committee, we'd love to have you so you can be involved with us on a daily, weekly basis so that we're adhering to any of the policies that you personally or the community would like to see.
What is the average length of sobriety before they would be eligible to come to this home?
So some people we meet on the detox unit. Both Dave and I volunteer on the detox unit in Cleveland. If someone has detoxed, they may have 5 days, 6 days of sobriety, and then they can come onto the property. They have to enter treatment as part of their living at Safe Harbor. So if they come to us 6 days in, they've had their assessment by either Lakota, CATS, Cleveland Clinic, a whole host of other clinical entities. We're not clinicians. We don't pretend to be clinicians. We don't want to be clinicians. We're sober living. They go through the assessment. They come to us. If we're told that they're fine and that they can live at the facility, we perform the background check, obviously, before we admit them into the facility. So, answer your question, could be about 5 days.
I have another question.
Ms. Whipke?
Thank you. You'd stated before that you don't give out any medications there, and everything, including aspirin and Tylenol, is under lock and key.
Yes.
So if they were needing something, even if they were diabetic or something, you don't keep that on the facility?
We have a locked box in the resident manager's cottage with cameras. We don't administer medication. If someone is on medication, they self-administer. They come in, the resident manager lets them take their medication. They have to show him that they've taken the medication. So they can't hand it, they can't hide it, they can't resell it. This is for their personal use. So we have strict policies, and we have video cameras to record that.
And does the resident manager have to be certified or
No.
any kind of licensing through the state?
No. I actually was in the healthcare field for many years. We have a member of the council that is a pharmacist. I sold medication equipment to hospitals, nursing homes, and prisons. I was not a certified reseller of the equipment. I was trained by a company. There is no certification that you need. The only certification would be if you were physically administering the medication, then you would have to be licensed. We're not administering medication. We're storing medication.
Anything else?
I guess based on that answer, what does the lockbox consist of? I mean,
one key in his residence with a camera so that if someone were to break into that, we have a recording of who it would be that's taking that medication.
is it like a safe style box, or
Safe-
is it just
it's a
a
safe-
thin?
It's a safe style box.
Okay.
We follow the same procedures that many of the other sober living facilities that are working in conjunction with communities to do the same policies and procedures.
I visited the facility yesterday with my wife, and we saw the lockbox, the cameras, and everything in place. And one thing you mentioned was at some point in time you're looking at putting even a more strict, more secure safe as like a gun safe type thing.
Correct.
But it's just simply to house the medications only.
There are no injectables.
Yeah.
These are all oral medications. And let me further state that when the tenant is at treatment, they're getting their medication there. This is really for evening and or weekend use. It's not for around-the-clock medication control. We even have aspirin and Tylenol controlled. We want no medications of any kind anywhere on the property other than in that drug box.
Anything else?
One thing that I did ask, and I received your text, I was just checking it, but just to state, some of the men are employed.
Correct.
Would their residence then be considered, Norton, during this time period, where they'd be taxable income? Not that this is a major issue, just to point out that they are going to be contributing members of society at that point, although they're not all employed.
Correct. So when someone's in treatment, and I'll use myself as a personal case, I was told anything you put in front of your sobriety is what you tend to lose first. Whether it's family, job, all of the above, you need to focus on your sobriety. These gentlemen are in day treatment. They're there for 60 to 90 days. They transition from day treatment to an IOP, which is when they start looking for work. We have several men that are now working. This is recent. We've not been around that long, as you all know. And once they go out to the workforce, they will pay taxes. They will have to pay rent to us. That's part of their rehabilitation. We anticipate at some point in time some longer-term residents. We want people that are examples to the new folks coming in of what sobriety can look like. Dave and I also run groups at the facility as we have longer-term sobriety. It's important for people to feel that they've accomplished their goal of sobriety. So we will anticipate that some will be there longer term, and then there will be residents of Norton and will be paying taxes.
Did you get your 501 certification?
We applied for it even before we opened, and we're still waiting. Our attorney told us that it's now in channels and we can receive it tomorrow, or it could take longer. That's the federal government, and we have no control over that.
And they were okay with you guys opening up without having these things?
Happens all the time. My first wife started an organization called The Gathering Place, which was a cancer wellness community. They were in operation for 9 months before they received their 501c3. It's just the way it goes.
Anything else? Thank you.
We, again, thank you for your concern, your participation, and your interest, and thank you for hearing me tonight.
Thanks. Ruth Steinmack.
Ruth Stymack, 2682 Dale Drive, Norton, Ohio. And I'm speaking on behalf of being a Norton resident, only 32 years, but I've been around a little while, and also sitting on Planning Commission, working at the schools for over 20 years. Some think, I believe it's a disease, has affected all of us. A couple of years ago, right next door to the school I worked at, people were ODing. I was going to more funerals of kids I watched grow up. We need something, and I did my research. They've got great recommendations. Cleveland Clinic doesn't put their name with just anybody. They're doing it right. They're holding them accountable. They'll be in treatment during the day. They want to do longer term, so recovery as soon as possible. We have it in our streets. Your next door neighbors. We need to do something to fight this. And after doing my homework, their presentation to us on planning, talking to them further, I've volunteered to be on their advisory committee. I believe this is something that can really bring a positive effect to Norton and the surrounding community. Right now, 44203, and I realize that includes Barberton, is the highest incidence of overdose and overdose deaths. That is not something I want my community to be known for. Let's make it be known for a recovery. Let this, they made some mistakes, but I think they have gone above and beyond trying to rectify those mistakes and go through our zoning, which is sometimes as clear as mud. And they're willing. And they're the faces of recovery. That's what we want to see in our community. And that's what you can help bring. Planning Commission, I didn't just vote to vote along with the board. I voted because in my heart of hearts, I know this is something that is positive for the community. And we need that positive. They're doing it the right way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Markey, we're past when we normally do public hearings. Should we move to that? Is there any problem if we continue with communications from the public, or?
I don't have a problem doing, the procedure in the zoning code doesn't actually require a public hearing, so council's holding one. It's extra, which is okay.
Okay.
So there's not a defect in the procedure if you don't have a public hearing. We sort of just had one right there in any event. But I would say if you want to open up now, that's not.
That's okay. We'll just go ahead and go on with communications from the public and just continue through. Bob McKnight.
Bob McKnight. I live at 3410 Cleveland Maslin Road, Norton, Ohio. I manage a business right a stone's throw from the safe harbor, and I have girls that walk out at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning after getting off of work, and I'm not so much concerned about the alcoholic rehab. The church I go to, we do the AA meetings and stuff. It's the drug addicts. I have dealt with drug addicts in the past, and that scares me because the average drug addict, after a 5-year period, there's only 7 to 8 out of 100 that will rehabilitate themselves. And that's a known fact. I just want to know you got 15 people living in this little house. That seems like a lot to me. And it says here that you've dismissed a few people. Why were they dismissed? Were they dismissed because they got caught doing drugs, or what the problem there was, and you had a couple people that came for a couple hours and stayed? Do the house parents, are they there for 24 hours? A friend of mine has group homes, and he has to have people there constantly. So, I mean, is this something that they watch over? Do they live there? Resident manager live there? And in the last minutes, it said that the property is secluded, and it is secluded. That's the one thing that concerns me, is because it's, our parking lot is lit up. We pay the city of Norton $36,000 a year in fees just to keep the business open. I want my girls and myself to be safe when we walk out of there, and that's my concern with the whole thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellis Evans.
My name's Ellis Evans. I reside at 907 Oak Street in Medina, Ohio. The first time I walked onto Safe Harbor property, I got this overwhelming feeling of how many lives were going to be saved because of the place. And I'm in recovery myself. I've been in recovery since 2013, and I went to a place that helped change my perspective and change my life ultimately. And then I'm originally from Akron, and then I moved to Medina. And then the recovery community, I got involved with recovery out there, and then I got involved with the community. Now I sit on, I'm on advisory council for the HRC, Hope Recovery Community, and I'm like an active part of that community. I went from Akron to a smaller town and just seen how much, I seen the way people were living there, and I wanted to better myself that way. And I wanted to grow as a human being and become a more productive person in society. I do have a scattered past, but I haven't been in any trouble for almost 10 years now because of recovery. It's completely changed my life. I do sit on the board with Safe Harbor, and I totally believe in it. I know that we need more things, more places like this. And these guys down here, they're just trying to get better, like this gentleman said, people leave sometimes or get kicked out. Well, they don't just get kicked out into Norton. They get taken back to where they come from, or their houses, or their family's houses, or whatever. And but the people that go there, they really, the majority of them care about themselves, and they want to change themselves and better themselves. And I guarantee you that if any one of you guys needed something done at your house, you could come pick up a carload of them, and they'd get it done in an hour or so. So I guess that's all I really have to say. I'm a little nervous, so thanks.
Thank you. Kevin Gardner.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to address you this evening. My name's Kevin Gardner. I live at 3999 Dog Leg Trail in Medina. The reason I'm here is because I serve on the Kathy's House board. Kathy's House is a sober living facility in Medina County, and I've seen the impact that it makes on the people that are residents there. I'm a business owner, okay? I have employed several of the people that have come through Kathy's House with my business. As a business owner, I wouldn't do that if I didn't believe in them and believe in the process. I'm in recovery myself, and I've just seen what a difference sober living can make for the people who are just desperately looking for a way to recover. So I know it works because I've seen it work. I've been involved with Kathy's House for quite a while now, and I've seen what impact it has made in the community of Medina. These are people that recover. These are people that do, just last Tuesday, vote. These are people who pay taxes. These are people who get jobs. And these are people who help other people in recovery. So not only are you helping them, but you're helping sustain long-term recovery, because it's our mission. I'm in recovery. It's our mission to help other people in recovery. So it's not just the first wave of people that you're helping, but you're helping additional waves that are coming right behind this next wave. And unfortunately, we know it's going to keep coming unless we do something to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Gillespie.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Matt Gillespie. I live at 4214 Watkins Road here in Norton, Ohio. I moved here 6 years ago this month to get away from the crime in Akron. I'm a probation officer in Portage County. That being said, I'm also a 4-time convicted felon and 16 years in active recovery. I've heard a lot of judgment this evening over what a drug addict is. When I walked into treatment, I had track marks up and down my arms. And here I am 16 years later. I became the first convicted felon in the state of Ohio to become a probation officer. And it was because of treatment and sober living and finding safe places to go. I now work out in Portage County, and I am on the front lines fighting this disease. And I know that it's a disease because the ADA says it's a disease. We are waging a war against a protected class with a mental health disorder. I know for a fact I have 3 children in Norton schools, and last year, 3 years ago, when my daughter was in 7th grade, she would show me clips of her classmates smoking weed in their parents' house. If you think this disease is not at the doorsteps right now, you are dead wrong. 7th grade. 7th grade, and they're already getting high. My daughter's in 10th grade now, and she doesn't go to a lot of the parties because she doesn't like watching them do what she knows I went through. This disease affects literally everyone. I've sponsored people in 12-step recovery that are doctors. I've sponsored lawyers, and I've sponsored convicted felons. It makes no difference. Norton has nothing in place. The reason that the state issue 1 failed 2 years ago was because there was no infrastructure in place. If we were to decriminalize all of these drugs and put them out with no consequences, we would be overrun. We finally have people willing to step up and give people a place to go where they can recreate their lives, and we're saying no. State issue 3 is about to pass. The courts are about to lose a lot of their oomph behind on what they can do with people who have felony convictions. State issue 3, if you guys aren't aware, is going to decriminalize or make all felony drug convictions now misdemeanors. They're not going to be able to spend time in Summit County Jail anymore. They're going to be on your streets. And if we take away the only place where they can go and recover, that's when you're going to see problems. That's when you're going to see the epidemic that the president just named a epidemic hit Norton, and hit Norton very hard. This is not the time to pull away from recovery. This is the time to embrace it, endorse it, and make sure that there's a place that is known to somebody who is struggling. And I don't just say that as somebody who has been through it. I say that because I watch it happen. My judge hasn't let people out of jail because they didn't have a safe place to go. Portage County is struggling more than Summit could ever imagine on safe places to live. We don't have it, and we don't know what to do with the people that are trying to recreate their lives. So as a member of your community, as a member that votes and pays my taxes and wants this place to be as awesome as it could be, the whole reason we chose to come out here, I implore you to please let something positive happen in our backyard. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Robinson.
Good evening, Council. My name is Stephanie Robinson. I'm a person in long-term recovery. That means I am a drug addict and I'm an alcoholic who has chose not to use drugs or alcohol for
Can we
the
have
past...
your address, please?
Oh, 441 North Broadway, Medina.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Nope, you're fine.
Person who has not chose to use drugs or alcohol for the last 11 years. I also work in the field of addiction and recovery. I'm the executive director of Hope Recovery Community, a nonprofit that serves Medina County and the surrounding counties. And I'm the coordinator of peer support services in Ohio Guidestone, which means I oversee the care of about 130 people people who are struggling with addiction through recovery coaching, treatment, and different options. I've brought in and advocated for facilities that support people that are impacted by addiction. I'm familiar with Safe Harbor. I've been there. I've worked with David. We've had the guys come out and support our events. We do weekly dinners in Wadsworth and Medina, which they've attended. They've been volunteers. We support what they're doing, and we support recovery housing. I believe in recovery, and I believe in giving people second chances. Recovery housing works. These are structured environments where people are able to be given a second chance, receive support, and be connected back into their dreams. People often ask me what I do for a living, and that's what I tell them. I help people dream that stopped dreaming a long time ago. It's amazing what can happen in recovery. Recovery housing, what it doesn't do, it's shown to not bring an increase of police or crime activity. It's shown to help people turn their lives around and make them become contributing members of society, of community. Recovery housing creates long-term, sustainable recovery. Someone mentioned the 5-year mark. Well, the 5-year mark is a magical mark that I actually built a nonprofit around, because at 5 years, the numbers are not alarming. At 5 years in recovery, somebody has an 85% chance to be in lifelong recovery. I advocate in Columbus on a monthly basis based on the 5-year model. So I love hearing about 5 years in recovery. Recovery housing is not only an investment, but it's an investment in people and in safer communities. The problem is that we often lack options. Every day I spend my life looking for places to send people, safe places. This is a safe place to send people. I have sent people there, and I will continue to do so in the future. We are, just like Matt had said, we are just lacking those options. My recovery community center has been open for 5 weeks. We alone have placed over 50 people in detox, treatment, and sober recovery housing. We need these places. I hear your concerns. I know we have to address, what if things go wrong? Don't forget, what if things go right? Recovery housing creates stronger individuals. It creates stronger families, and ultimately, it creates stronger communities. Imagine that. I heard the statistics. I know the statistics. I know them for here. I know them for Medina. I know them for the round of the state of Ohio. Right now, we are at the top in not a good way. Imagine Norton taking a stand, doing something a little bit different, investing in their community, and seeing a shift in those statistics. Imagine that. What if it goes right? I support recovery housing because I support solutions to a problem that we are facing. I support Safe Harbor, and ultimately, I support in people seeking recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gail Bazzelli.
Hi, my name's Gail Bazzelli, and I live at 1035 Reedy Drive in Wadsworth with my husband, who is an alumnus of Norton High School. I guess I'll get on the same train and tell you that my sober date is November 17, 2017. So next week I'll have 2 years. It's a fellowship. It's a cure almost for this disease that so many of us are hit with, to have each other. One of the very last, when you're learning your steps, is reach out. You help someone because somebody helped you. So every time you see somebody who says they're in recovery, another 10 people are probably attached to that. It really does work, not for everybody, but David and Mark are right where they need to be. We have nothing, as you've heard, in Wadsworth or Norton for sober living. So I would just ask everybody to please realize that, look at all of us, you probably would have never guessed that we were people in recovery until we told you that. And it's our duty and our giving back to help others who are in recovery. So I stand by Safe Harbor 5,000%. Thank you.
Thank you. Russ Bazzelli.
First of all, Russ Bizzelli, 1035 Reedy Drive, Wadsworth, Ohio. I'm also a property owner here in Norton, Ohio, 2774 Shellhart Road, Norton, Ohio, 44203. I want to thank my wife for saying everything I was going to say. I just want to say good evening to you. But what I really want to say is this. The hour's late, so I'm going to be brief. We have a responsibility. We have a responsibility. You have a responsibility. Very tough. God bless you. You're worried about the safety of the community. I'm hearing from the council, what do you mean crimes of violence? Well, some of us could go 290101 A9 of the revised code, and there's every crime of violence you need to worry about. It's going to describe it for you. I didn't want to do divorce work, but I guess this God has a sense of humor. Now I'm doing it. I didn't want to do custody work. No thanks. I didn't want to speak on behalf of others in recovery. There was a stain, there was a stigma. And then I learned it's called being human. Well, if there is a God, he does or she does have a sense of humor. That's why I'm here tonight, to say, please, when you are considering this entity here in Norton, you're going to have a tax-paying, revenue-generating business. You're going to have folks that are going to be returning to a tax-paying, law-abiding lifestyle. It's like anything else. We can all make mistakes. I do respect everyone's concern about their family members, too. And you need safety. You need checks and balances. And I believe these young men are being totally transparent in everything they have done and will do. And in compliance as well with what is required in the way of zoning. I will ask each one of you, when you are making your decision on behalf of yourselves and your constituents, to consider, am I fulfilling my duty as my sister's and my brother's keeper? Or am I going to be the one who's going to cast the first stone? That's your own personal, deep-rooted, moral decision. I'm not judging that. But I'm asking you to consider, when we have entities like this that are coming here to Norton, I had a great life growing up here. Still do when I visit my sister. And it's a beautiful neighborhood. And it's because everybody takes pride in what they do. I would not speak on behalf of this effort if I didn't see that pride and I didn't feel it. They have growing pains, then they do. But if you give them the opportunity, that's all I would ask. I thank you very much.
Thank you. And David Wells.
Good evening, Council. And thank you for those that came out to support. We brought several other people that chose not to spoke, and we asked many people not to come because we didn't want to create a circus here. I think that we've shown that the community does support what we're trying to do. We don't deny that we made some mistakes in the beginning, and for that we apologize, and we want to make amends for that. My address, by the way, Mr. Kernan, is 216 Moore Road in Avon Lake, Ohio, and I'm a drug addict and a convicted felon. And without sober living, I wouldn't be standing here in front of you guys today. I had a long road back and was homeless at one point. But that's a story for another day. I do, we heard some people in support. We heard a lot of positive things about recovery. It doesn't change the fact that there are concerns. And Mr. McKnight, and thank you for coming tonight, Mr. McKnight, and asking your questions. Do we have 24/7 coverage? We do have a resident manager, and below him we have what we term as house fathers. There is always someone in authority at the facility. Our tenants and our residents are never unsupervised on their own accord by design. I've sat on the board of a place called the Lantern Center for Recovery, which is on the west side of Cleveland, Ohio. And I've been on the board for 6 years. The facility's been open for 9, and they house over 60 men in that facility. And in the 9 years that place has been open, There has not been one incident of someone who has relapsed or been discharged that has caused crime in that neighborhood. Mr. Tony Parker, who's a mentor of mine and runs the facility's executive director there, was happy to come down and speak on our behalf, but I asked him not to because it didn't want to create the circus. But that's the experience that I can point to, is that when Safe Harbor discharges someone, and it could be for not following the rules, it could be for leaving unannounced, for leaving with someone that they didn't sign out with, and it could be for a relapse. It could be for that. They are not released into the community. They must have a vehicle, someone pick them up. Usually it's a family member. Unfortunately, sometimes it's a friend that we'd rather not release them to, but they do leave by automobile outside of the facility. So we're not turning them loose on the streets of Norton, Ohio. Ms. Whipke, you asked a couple of questions, and someone else on the council asked a question. I wanted to clarify a little bit. Many of our residents come through drug court. So we know, or our clinicians, our treatment partners know their past history. The policy that we forwarded on to council talks about what our policy is. And Safe Harbor, as its own entity, reserves the right to accept or decline any potential applicant that comes to us. I think, I don't have all of the answers. How do you define a violent crime? That's up for subjective review. But what I can say is that we're welcoming the opportunity to have residents of the community on our advisory committee to help us and help the community feel more comfortable with exactly what are those parameters. And I guess that's the best answer that I can give is, we're welcome to that. Mark and I want to be transparent here. We're not, we didn't come into the city with the intention of opening without permission and opening without permits and creating a disturbance. That was never our intention. Our goal and our mission has always been to help people, and we're very active in recovery, and part of the recovery program is a program of honesty and integrity. And we personally feel hurt that we got put in this position of being accused of doing the wrong thing. And we made some mistakes, and there's no question about that. But please give us the opportunity to make amends and make those right. The other question I wanted to clarify was, someone asked the average number of days sober, and my partner responded and said about 5 days sober. It's actually not true. Several of our residents come from Community Assessment Treatment Services, which has a facility in Wadsworth, CATS, it's more commonly known as. So those gentlemen are coming out of a 60-day program, residential program at the former Wadsworth Rittman Hospital, and coming to us with some sobriety behind them. Others are coming to us from other sober living facilities, and some do come right out of the hospital, the detox unit. So some have 5 days, which would be the minimum. I don't know that I could give you the average. I could go to our resident manager and ask to tally that up, but my guess is with the residents and tenants that we have there today, the average number of days sobriety is probably at 30 plus days, certainly, if not 60 plus days. But the new residents that come in, I would tend to say it's probably about a 30-day average. And since I'm a representative of Safe Harbor, and I think I'm the last speaker, is there any other questions that I can clarify or answer?
Anyone?
I would just like
Mayor?
to ask, I know that you may or may not be allowed or permitted, but as far as people that are there at Safe Harbor now, how many people from Norton actually is there, do you know?
2 currently. Yeah, I think in the the few months preceding us, I think we've had 4 or 5 Norton residents. Sure.
Okay.
So those 2 are actually residents of Norton, or they're just related to residents of Norton?
They are residents of Norton.
Anyone else?
Just briefly, you guys have been associated with past facilities, I'm told, by you all. In those past facilities, were any of them opened without permits? Were you able to walk into a community and open up a place like you have today? In May, you opened up. I don't understand how you would feel that you should be allowed to just open it up in May and you had no permitting whatsoever. No health department, no fire department, no city permits, none whatsoever. How, just in your mind, where did that come from?
That's a great question, Mr. Gaynor. I'm glad you asked that. So the property was purchased on a land contract. So technically the deed is under the current property owner, which is Michael McDonald. One of the reasons Mark mentioned earlier, he met with the fire department and the police department, is we're having to pick up some pieces that he left behind that have to do with permits. So our assumption was that those permits were already in place and active and had been renewed over the years. What we have found is that that is not the case. So when we opened our facility, we were under the impression that those permits were already in place for a similar line of business that was already established, that being the motel, as well as tenants and rental properties.
So, excuse me. So you're saying that you felt that you didn't need a permit, that you already had it because it was a motel before?
Well, what I'm saying is that before we ever decided to purchase and acquire the property, we looked at several. And we reached out to the city of Norton on numerous occasions to try and let people know what we were trying to do and what our mission was. And we then consulted with our attorneys and laid out the situation, purchasing on a land contract, what the property was. They did some research on the county site as to how it was zoned and felt that because it was a land contract and the current owner of the property and the nature of the business, that those permits were in place. So, as we continued to try and open discussions with the city of Norton, we went on the legal advice, and moved forward, and that obviously was a mistake that we're dearly paying for.
So you're saying that some attorney someplace, your attorney, advised you that it was permissible for you to open up a sober living facility in the city of Norton without any kind of permits whatsoever?
Well, there were already permits in place.
No, I mean for a sober living facility.
Well, there's no specific permits for sober living, Mr. Gaynor.
What specific permits were in place that you felt would be applicable to you?
Next question.
Well, and I'm not an expert on zoning, so I don't know that I'm really even qualified to say. What we know is the property was being rented out, so there were tenants. When we took over the property, we had tenants on site left over from the existing property owner, as well as technically tenants of Safe Harbor.
Were there 15 of them?
I'm sorry?
All right.
Were there 15 of them?
So we're going to have a public hearing, and this is communications from the public.
That's next, so okay.
Right.
Okay,
But, I mean, I just don't want to start having a lot of people coming up and adding in.
So my partner gets
It's okay, I get it, but we are going to have a public hearing, so we're probably going to ask some of these questions there too. But, and I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you going to say?
I don't recall exactly.
Okay.
I'm kind of nervous myself here.
Could you restate the question? Right?
My whole line of questioning there, sir, was I'm a little concerned about the fact that if if you or your attorneys or someone made the decision to open this facility up without any permits or anything, I question your ability to run it correctly. Because if you didn't know enough to get permits, I don't know what you can open in any city, any place without permits of some kind or another. Before you respond, I don't know of any business, none, that you can come into a city and open that facility without any kind of permits. I don't know of any facility where you can move 15 people, 18 people, however many people are there, into a housing facility of any kind without having the health department, the EPA, or somebody check the septic system to see if it's proper to accommodate that many people. I personally called the health department and asked them if they had inspected this property, and they said no, that was up to the EPA because of the motel-type facility that it was. And I explained to the fellow I spoke to at the health department that it's no longer a motel. We're not renting out rooms as a motel. We're accommodating people who are recovering alcoholics and addicts. And he said he was under the impression that because he had received a couple of other calls on it, he was under the impression that this would be covered by the Ohio EPA. I also know that we had a fire chief going to inspect the place and was told that it was under another state fire marshal's jurisdiction. There's all kinds of different stories coming. I just feel personally that due to the fact that this was opened unbeknownst to anybody, I didn't know about it, and I don't think anybody in council knew about it, and it was open. I see on Facebook where one fellow said he had worked there since May 10th. He had worked there, not lived there, but he had worked there since May 10th. That was his words, not mine. And if that's the case, then somebody was doing something in that facility from May 10th to present time. And all of this time has went by with no permits until the Planning Commission received a request for conditional use permit. As I say, I just think that it was bad judgment on your guys' part to open this facility at all without the permits that any business would have been required to receive. So, in my opinion, that's just a bad deal all around.
So I'm going to defer answering that question because I think that probably falls under the better expertise of Mark. So when we do the public hearing, is that okay?
Yes.
With council?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Gaynor, I'd like to invite you to be a part of Safe Harbor and be on our advisory council because you're obviously astute and we could use someone with a mind like that. Is that something you would consider?
No, sir.
Okay.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, back to Committee of the Whole. At this point, we'll acknowledge the October 2019 budget reports. Letter C, the annual appropriations ordinance. Ms. Whipke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Basically, this is just going to be our year's budget that we're starting to go over for approving and amending that we're going to be starting tonight going over. Same thing we do every year, just go over all the finances and expenses. And we need to put this, make a motion to add ordinance 123, 2019 to tonight's agenda for first reading.
No, second.
There's a motion and a second to add ordinance number 123, 2019 for its first reading tonight. Is there any discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carrot?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Anything else to come before Committee of the Whole? Consideration of the minutes of the regular council meeting of October 28th, 2019. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes? They will be accepted as submitted. Reports from officers, boards, and commissions. Mayor Zita?
I have no report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fowler?
Sorry, I'm texting the fire chief. Hold on 1 second. I have a few items of concern, of interest. So Johnson Road, you may have noticed, there's some work going on in Johnson Road. And Mr. Towsley and I discussed it before the meeting. They probably won't work much the rest of the week due to weather, but they will grind a portion of the road and then repave it so as to keep it passable. So I just ask folks to be patient because it's not a final product, and they're doing what they can to maintain traffic after hours. So it was to be completed by November 15th, but due to, a blizzard that's here, they will be probably delayed a week. Last week, the mayor and I met with the OHM group that's doing the Columbia Woods Master Plan. They're going to start collecting their information. I have them coming to the Parks Board meeting. They're going to meet with some local community groups, and they'll be doing an online survey through December. So I'll make sure that once we get that information that we'd ask you all to participate as well. But the Parks Master Plan is drafted through public input, and that is much appreciated. You may have noticed that last week our second concrete ramp was installed, CW2. So now all our pavilions are now disability friendly. It's part of our upgrade to become more friendly to those with disabilities. The Cleveland-Massillon Road Water and Sewer Line project's complete. We have a final walkthrough coming up here soon, so those connections will start. We will need an ordinance, hopefully before the end of the year, to establish the connection rates for those water and sewer lines. But it's something I want council to consider. We funded those 100%. Now the property owner guarantees that money, but if someone connects a resident, are we offering them the 60-40? Or I just want you all to be thinking of that as we progress towards setting that rate. I know we kind of had a philosophy on that. I just wanted you to be considerate of that. In case you didn't know, New Park Drive is under construction. If you want to see how high the road is going to be, you can see the catch basins are elevated approximately 3 to 4 feet. So the road will be elevated 3 to 4 feet, which will help alleviate some of the flooding during that time. We get high water. Because it's beginning to snow, I thought I should tell you that, Larry wanted me to mention that because of council, this is the first time we'll have 5 really good snowplows and a backup snowplow ready for the season. It means a lot to us that you provide us the equipment to get the job done, but it does help provide that service. And I wanted to let you know that we'll have 6 snowplows ready for tonight, should we be needed. And then lastly, something the mayor and I have been working on for the better part of 2 months. It is Veterans Day. He and I are strong advocates for veterans. And next year in October, the first weekend in October, please mark your calendar for Friday, I believe it's the 3rd, we're going to host the Ohio Flags of Honor. And the Ohio Flags of Honor are, it's a special group. They have a flag for each soldier who was killed in the conflict, in the recent conflict that is from Ohio. And there'll be a ceremony that lasts about 90 minutes where we place those flags. It will take a lot of volunteer support to get that accomplished, but I really think I will get the website for council. I'd encourage you to go look at. They have a ceremony that talks about each soldier and kind of how it started. And it really is an honor to those who have died serving our country in these conflicts. And the mayor and I are both very happy to have them in the city of Norton for that time. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Messner?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Mr. Markey?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
All right. Public hearings. I now declare the public hearing convened on Planning Commission Resolution number CUP 3 2019. Resolution number CUP 3 2019 is a conditional use permit for PPN 46000019 and PPN 46000018 for Safe Harbor Norton. When I call for anyone who wishes to speak, we're going to stick with that 5-minute rule. Please come up, give your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak for or against the resolution. So having said that, is there anyone who wishes to speak for the said resolution? Come forward, give your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
My name is Dylan Skamer. My address is 3140 Wadsworth Road, Norton, Ohio. I work at a treatment center, IBH Addiction Recovery Center. I've been there for about 4 years now. And I grew up here. I went to high school here, spent my whole life here. I am myself in recovery. I'll have 6 years in a couple days. As far as sober housing, where I've worked the past 4 years, we've done some changes as far as insurance. We do Medicaid now, so the residents only have 30 to 60 days at our facility. And I'm watching a lot of people struggle to get housing. Sober living there's not a lot right now. And like my buddy Matt back here said, a lot of these people in this facility we have are blue-collar people. As far as concerns about criminal activity, for the most part, that's a stereotype. I grew up in this town. I love this town. This is my home. But I also have bought a lot of drugs in this town. In nice neighborhoods, too. Mount Vernon over here. I don't know if there's permits for that trailer park down there, but there should be. I love this town, and bringing something like that to this city will only be a positive. And if anybody thinks otherwise, I think that's stereotypical. And that's part of the problem today. I'm on the front lines just like Matt, and it's not perfect. There's a lot of kinks that need to be worked out with the whole system, but sober living is not going to bring a negative to this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak for the resolution?
Mark Safran, 126 Windsor Circle, Aurora. First, just let me thank those that came out tonight. I'm sitting here and I'm honored and proud of the folks that I haven't even met. It's a very humbling experience to hear folks that came out to talk about their recovery. Many folks choose to be anonymous, and some of them broke that veil tonight. I just want to clarify a few things, Mr. Gaynor, just so that we're clear with the rest of the council. Yes, we made mistakes. Both Dave and I have admitted that we've made mistakes. I can't unwind the time. We were under the impression that we had the right permits in place, as there was a motel, and we were told by the previous owner, where we have a land contract with, that he had all permits. I can tell you a few things. I spent time with the fire chief and the fire marshal, and that's why I wanted to come back up and talk about that. Your fire chief has said that he was not responsible for the property because it was under state purview. The state fire marshal said it's not under his purview, and neither one of them know which purview it should be under. The recommendation was to come back to city council to get a permit, and then when we have the appropriate permit, they'll determine whether it's going to be the city of Norton or the fire marshal. We've invited them out. We have smoke detectors. We want to make sure that everyone's comfortable. They said, happy to do that. I know that the EPA was contacted. I also contacted SUPEC Septic System. There is no one living in the motel currently, but you need to understand that when we took over this property, there were residents in that motel. There was a meth addict cooking meth in that motel. There was a woman with 18 cats living in that motel. There were other residents. There was a rape on that facility over 2 years ago. When we took over, those folks were evicted immediately. We don't want them on that property. That motel will not be open until it's renovated and brought up to a safety code and a safety standard. We had the APA come out last week, and they said they have no record of that motel even having a septic system, which is a concern to us. We're now working with SUPEC to try to figure out, even though there's no one in the motel, how do we get this up to standard? We have invested our time and effort in a property that is fairly deficient, and we're trying to make the corrections. I really appreciated Councilmember Grant come out last night. We gave he and his wife a tour. They're seeing the things that we're trying to do. So, again, Mr. Gaynor, we're sorry that it appears that we tried to go around everyone's back. That was never our intention. We did reach out to the city. We did think we had valid permits in place. As I said earlier this evening, we're willing to pull back the conditional use permit if you can tell us what we should be permitting under. We want to work with this community, and I'm honored to be in front of you, and I'm honored to be in meet so many fine people that have come out on our behalf tonight. So if there's some other question based on that, I just wanted to clarify that.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak for the resolution?
Good evening, Council. My name is Katie Patton. I live at 986 Sherrill Drive in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm here today. I run a sober living facility much like Safe Harbor called the Jean Marie House in Brook Park. It's a division of the Ed Keating Center. I run the women's facility. Much like, the community of Norton, Brook Park was extremely hesitant as well about having drug addicts and alcoholics living next door to them. The neighbor to the right and to the left, it's a residential neighborhood. It used to be a nursing home. And they were scared and intimidated, and they felt like the crime in their community was going to go up. Prior to the women living there, there were men living there prior to us living there. Our men's facility was located there. And I've been running Jean Marie House for 10 years. In 10 years, there's never been a violent altercation whatsoever. The neighbors bring us tomatoes from their gardens, and we help them with their lawns, and we shovel their snow. And that's the type of service, of community service that my female residents provide. I'm on both sides of this as well. Someone mentioned, the difference between an alcoholic and a drug addict, and that just tugs at me hardcore, because there is no difference between a drug addict and an alcoholic. We all suffer from the same disease. I am what a heroin addict looks like. I shot heroin for many years. I have 17 years sober. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm proud as hell to say that. These women that I help in the community of Brook Park, these are people's daughters, people's mothers, people's sisters, and they're good women. And you take them out of that environment, you pluck them out of that unhealthy environment, and they get some sobriety under their belt, and they get good direction, and leadership is key. These are good leaders. These men were taught well by people that I know well firsthand. And good leadership is key, and you provide them structure, and they get a little bit of sobriety under their belt. And I've had women become nurses and probation officers, like this gentleman back here, and productive members of society. But even the ones that work at McDonald's are good people. They're good people. I was a good person. I had a problem, and I don't use my addiction as an excuse. I did what I did. I made decisions, and that's how it was. But I'm not standing up here as some sort of victim. I'm just saying recovery is possible. And I get people from Summit County all the time. I get phone calls from Summit County. I get phone calls from South Carolina, Pennsylvania, Tennessee. I get calls from all over because we're lacking in help for these people. And so we are inundated in Cuyahoga County. inundated, and we need more beds. We need more communities to open up and say, we're going to get on board too, and we're going to help. And like I said, it all starts with good leadership, and these guys are good leaders. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak for the resolution?
My name is Pat Patton. I live at 17820 Engle Court, Brook Park, Ohio. I'm proud to be the director of the Jack Mulhall Center. It's in Cleveland, Ohio. I was mentored by Jack Mulhall. Many of these people are from his tree, as you will. You have the Bill Parcells tree in football and the Belichick tree. In Cuyahoga County, you got the Jack Mulhall tree. And Tony Parker, who mentored some of these people here, was mentored by him. I was assistant director at Stella Maris. It's a detox center and halfway house before I went to work at the city of Cleveland. I ran the city of Cleveland's employee assistance program for 18 years. So I've been working with drunks for 45 years. I've been sober myself since October 20th, 1974, and I'm proud of that. And the lady that just talked before me, I know both sides of this problem. I spent a year and a half as a winehead in the city of Cleveland, living in the streets, doing whatever I had to do to survive. And today I run a facility. I ran the employee assistance program for the city of Cleveland for 18 years. I was a PTU president at St. Thomas More Parish in Brooklyn. I was financial secretary for IBEW Local 39 for 20 years. Drunks, addicts, grow up to be good citizens. Just need a chance. And I opened up that with a lot of help in a school setting. I had the Nuns House at St. Patrick's West Park on Purist and Rocky River Drive. I have the Nuns House there. I have 40 men there, constantly 40 men, with the same problem that these people are going to have is not enough room. I opened up a year ago, September 1st, we had our first year. And I've been full ever since I opened those doors. And I got a waiting list. And I get the same calls that Katie gets. And I'm also the father of a heroin addict, a sober one. Huh? Alcoholics Anonymous works, halfway houses work. And they work in conjunction. 12-step programs don't take responsibility for any of these side things that have to be to help other people. And all these people are trying to do is help somebody. And I went through the same thing with the city of Cleveland, having the zoning change because we didn't look like nuns. And I couldn't get by with that one. But again, I know these guys. I talked to them. I know Richie. He's the guy that is in charge there 24/7. And I know Richie is a serious person about recovery. And I've known him a good part of his sobriety. He helped me laboring at my place to get my doors open. We work together in Cuyahoga County. We're not in competition with, and we're not, we work to help each other. And it's a collaborative effort that is working. If you don't have the help that they're willing to give you here, you're missing the boat. And I firmly believe that when they say they're sorry that they overstepped the boundary maybe, but in a zeal to help a drunk and a recovering alcoholic and drug addict has a tendency to rush. And maybe that's what happened, part of it, and it's a rush to help somebody. And it took me from a good year I sat with every inspection done except for the fire inspection in the city of Cleveland for 4 months waiting for the final inspection. 4 months. During the 4 months, I can't tell you how many people died of an overdose. And I'm not going to tell you that we could have helped any of them people, but I couldn't help them if I had a chance because we couldn't get the doors open quick enough. So I think that I got one more story. We're getting things prepared, and we got the trades in there working. We had volunteer painters. Volunteers did most of the work in my place. And there's a prayer group that meets in the chapel. We let part of the agreement was that the chapel at the nun's house would be used by the parishioners of St. Pat's Parish. And these little old ladies, and I mean that with the love in my heart because I'm old myself. And they came in and said, "Mr. Patton, what can we do for you?" And my buddy that was with me that helped me through some of the construction said, "I think Mr. Patton needs prayers." And prayers to get this place open. They dedicated prayers daily. They still pray for us there. And then around Thanksgiving time last year, they came in, and my wife was in the office doing some paperwork, and they handed her a $50 check. These ladies didn't have $50 to give. That warmed my heart. That $50 was $1 million to me. So we were embraced by St. Patrick's Parish slowly but surely. We are in the middle of a school zone.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up. 'Cause
We coexist with a school on St. Patrick's property with no problems at all. For the first year, we've had no problems with our guys and those students. And we take care and make sure that those students, the snow's shoveled, and so that when they go from building to building, they're not slipping and sliding and breaking their legs. That's what drunks and addicts do that are sober. And I think that's got to be paramount in your line, what we can bring to the table, not what we take away. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak for the resolution? Well, Mr. Casey jumped up there. Go ahead, Mr. McKnight.
Again, Bob McKnight, 4437 Greenwich Road is where my business is, or where the business is. I would just like to say that I'm not opposed to helping people because I truly believe that you do have to help each other. And for all these people that are recovering, God bless them. My dad was an alcoholic. He didn't stop drinking until he was 82, and by that time our childhood was over, so it didn't really matter. The thing of it is we moved from Barber Road, where I didn't feel safe, and if anybody knows Barber Road, you wouldn't feel safe down on Barber Road, especially at 1 o'clock in the morning, up to Greenwich Road. If I would have known that this place was up there, we could have found another location possibly. Maybe I've got a bitter taste in my mouth because a friend of mine was killed this year and stuffed in a storage unit by a drug addict who was her friend, who she was trying to help, who was going through rehabilitation. The only thing I'm concerned with is the safety of my employees and the other people of Norton. I've dealt with drug addicts. I moved from Akron to Norton because I didn't have to deal with it. I moved from North Hill to Goodyear Heights, so I didn't have to deal with people in North Hill, and then I moved from Goodyear Heights to Norton thinking, okay, this is cool because I love the community, everything about the community, and then all of a sudden, we're not inviting it in, and like I said, I'm not opposed to helping people because I've actually had people that I've tried to help that were drug addicts because I've cleaned out houses that were vacant, and there was homeless drug addicts living in these houses, and I've offered them work, and they'd work for one day, and then they'd go, as soon as they got a little bit of money, they'd go buy their drugs. And I realized you have to go through, I think you have to go through treatment for more than 5 days to be, put back out in society. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Casey?
Joe Casey, 3141 Monterey Drive. I'm not going to keep repeating what everybody else is saying. All I'm going to ask you guys to do is don't dwell on the past mistakes they made. We've all made mistakes. Right? These guys are trying to do a good thing. I mean, they're drive past the property. It's an eyesore. They're going to turn it into a nice, developed area of our city that we need. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak for the resolution? Ms. Stymack?
Ruth Stymack, 2682 Dell Drive, Norton, Ohio. I just have to comment, Mr. McKnight just mentioned how many different communities he tried to move to get away from it. It's everywhere around us. So let's bring a solution. Let's bring some healing to our community, to this community, because you can go Cuyahoga Falls, Akron, Barberton, Copley, Kenmore. It's everywhere. And now we need to be part of the solution because we can't run from it. We can't hide from it. To see all these faces, kids, they're kids to me, watch grow up. Because I've been at the schools for over 20 years. I want to see their faces still. And this is a step in the right direction to see their faces and see the faces of recovery. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Anyone wishes to speak for the resolution?
Yeah, hi, my name's Santo Costanzo with Doylestown, 513 Sandstone Circle. I've been working 18 to 24 months on trying to open up a recovery home in Medina County. We started a nonprofit called Francis House. And we had to learn from a lot of these folks here what this is about. And we're still learning, and we're in the process, so we hope to have a home opened up here shortly. There's three things I just wanted to mention. First of all is we have to look at facts and research that's been done, and there's called the Oxford Study. And the Oxford Study shows there's in the United States, Canada, Australia, that these recovery homes do not increase crime. And these homes also, Oxford Study is what they call peer support. So it's peer-to-peer. They don't even have really a house manager. So it's just people in recovery that's working together. So I encourage you to look up Oxford Study. It's very, very, very easy to find. The other part is in regards to the conditional use permit. When you look at the American Disabilities Act, they look at active recovery as being a disability. So by the nature of the American Disabilities Act, you really can't discriminate those that are in active recovery. The other part is the Fair Housing Act. Is another area where it doesn't really, you really can't force, from what we're learning from the laws, is that you really can't force a conditional use or a special permit for those that have disabilities or in a disability. So I just encourage you to kind of look at those things, look at the Oxford Study, look at the American Disabilities Act, and look at the Fair Housing Act as you make your decision. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak for the resolution?
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Krant.
Actually, this is sort of near and dear to my heart because I deal with folks in addiction every day, and I have for many years. I work with several treatment facilities nearby and some quite a distance away. There is a difference between treatment facility and a sober living. And it's something I haven't heard a lot about tonight, but treatment facility is where you actively are going through treatment and you're more at risk, in my opinion, from what I've understood. And those who are going into sober living have already been through that, have graduated that other program, and are going out to try to reacclimate, reassimilate into society, trying to normalize their lives and perhaps start a new life. There are a number of different issues that are bouncing around in my head about this, so bear with me. But one of the primary things that is a good fit in Summit County is we have one of the most court-friendly situations in our county towards rehabilitation and people recovering. And consistent with our county's court systems, I believe this would be an additional plus for us to have a place for them to live. Time is of the essence. The gentlemen who are investing in this property will have ultimately some sort of limit to their budget, how much they can afford to put into this property, and what it's going to cost to drag it out through this process. I think they need a helping hand to a certain degree. You know, there's some that may disagree with that, sitting on this side, and we each have an opinion based on our own experiences. But my experience was we could have used a helping hand at Johnson Church when we were going to develop a back 40, and I think the city dropped the ball on that. We would have a wonderful retirement situation here in our city, but the people involved weren't working together. And I think, and I'll call out the name Jeff Pritchard, who was our planning director at the time, was not able to or did not reach out enough and do enough for that facility. And now that church has a debt of $1 million that they're paying off. This is something that I think we're just not being necessarily business friendly in a sense. And I think that a helping hand from our side is warranted. It's something that we need to learn to do. I am all about doing it right, because the last thing we want to do is have something that we've okayed and then have it come back in our faces and that something was not right. And I would not be for that. But I believe that we are short a lot of housing in our county for people to live and to reintegrate into society. There's a stigma, and I will say, out of my 5 children, 3 have struggled with addiction. Now 1 is an addiction coach. But it has touched my family like many of yours. And one of the things that we could have used for one of our kids, at least, was a place for them to live so they could feel safe and hold a job and go out and work and come home to a safe place where they were monitored. That would have been a real plus. And he still doesn't have that. There are several issues with this, and I think to set up this facility, yes, we have to do it right. I think one of the concerns I hear bounced around this group is, what is the truth? Who has, have things been misrepresented? Were things done incorrectly on purpose? Or is it by mistake? And the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle between those two polar opposites. And I think if we're going to act in a business-friendly way, we need to start coming across that divide between us and extend a hand and try to help. Now, if it's not set up properly, it shouldn't go forward. So if the conditional use permit is the wrong permit, Mr. Markey, I'm going to ask you to help me. Let's find what the right permitting is. I'm not an expert in that. And Mr. Fowler, I'm charging you guys with, please, let's see what we can do to find the right way to guide these gentlemen. And if they don't follow that, that's on them. So the timeline, I don't know what that is. Don't know when your money runs out. But I will say I was at the facility yesterday, and I've seen the facility over the past few years, and they have made tremendous improvements to the property, which, in my opinion, was a blighted property. If there had been a fire, there probably would have been a blessing. No, that's not true. So I need to hear a little bit more about the conditional use and where we stand. If it's the wrong permit, then I'd be against it. If it's the right permit, let's move forward. Let's do something. Let's do the right thing.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak for the resolution? For the second time, is there anyone who wishes to speak for the resolution? For the third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to speak for the resolution? Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the resolution? Please step forward, give your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the resolution? For the third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to speak against the resolution?
Now, can I, or after the third time?
You're good. You're good to go.
Thank you. I'm against it. I'm sorry, Mr. Grant. I don't even see where this business thing is even coming in. This is not a business. They've said that they're basically helping people. There will be no property taxes generated. What little bit we would be seeing out of that would be for whoever may be working and bringing in an income from somewhere. So that I don't get where your business thing was. I'm just going with that because that's the latest thing. I don't buy for 1 second that you couldn't have known that everything was kosher. You stated you went to the fire marshal, you went to our fire chief, and they told you that they didn't know, it wasn't their jurisdiction. That right there should have been big red flags going off. I keep hearing how this is good for our community, but most of the people coming in are not from our community. They're going to be coming, so you have 2 there. That's good. I'm tired of hearing 44203, like Norton is the only one in 44203, or Summit County. Most of you people, no offense, but you're not from Norton. You came from out of this area, and you're all affiliated. My people that I've talked to, and they do all live in Norton, they're not interested in having you here. I resent the fact that I've read in the newspapers, and I've read over and heard over, not tonight, but I've read constantly how Norton welcomed you here. And I'm not seeing that. I don't see where you were welcomed by our administration, by our police department, by our fire department, or most of the people in the community outside of somebody who's already vested in this somehow. So, no, I'd like, how do you get 15 people in one house? I started to ask before. You said there were people living in that motel. Would have been illegally. I wish we had done something about it. But were there, was there 15 of them? How do you have 15 people in one house? How is that safe? Where did that come from? You'd think there should be a permit. I don't think we'd allow anybody to have 15 people living in one house. And because you're not using the motel, you're just using the houses, of which your resident manager has an entire house by himself, and in the rest of it, you have the 15 people. And Mr. McKnight, 2 of the father figures or whatever they are, those are also people that are in recovery that are part of the program, if I understand correctly. I get what you're saying, but I just kind of feel, yes, I do. I perfectly understand y'all need help. But this was not brought here in any transparent way. And I think that there's been a lot of things put forward that's just not the way it was. You did not get any of the permits. You've been through this before. You've been involved with all these other people that's been through it, but yet you took none of those steps, and because you did not see this or that, you just went ahead and you moved them in. And now there you are. And now you want us to come along and pick up the pieces and reassemble them so that you'll be okay there and say that, yeah, we want you here. Well, like I said, I've talked to a lot of people, and throughout the years, I've heard they don't want another halfway house or anything like that within the city of Norton. Unfortunately, those people aren't here, but I bet if you put this on the ballot, you're liable to see something different. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Kern.
Mr. Tousley.
I don't want to speak for or against it all. I kind of feel out of place speaking now, but I want the residents to know where my seat is coming from. So I just want to, for me, at my seat, I'm not as concerned about whether you should have had a permit in May as I am, you're before us November 11th. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm not holding the past against anybody. I'm looking at today, moving forward, because that's why you're here. I've got 6 letters from residents right contiguous to the property from what I understand. I really wish they would have come because I think they would have been helpful. But I just want everybody to know my mind isn't made up completely. I support the human heart that you guys have in investing in other people. You can never go wrong in investing in other people. And I just want everybody to know I listened and I heard. I've written down who was for, who was against, which Mr. McKnight, I'm not 100% sure. I think you're against, but you stood up during for, so I want to make sure I understand that correctly. But I just want people to know where I'm coming from, as I'm still waiting to hear from residents, because that's my job, is to represent. And I'm not worried about May, I'm worried about today.
Anyone else? So just so I know, procedurally,
Yes.
we need to vote on whether to approve or deny.
Yeah, so the procedure it's set up is conditional uses. We'll step back and talk about conditional uses
Right.
generally. So I believe that they were advised to file for conditional use permit.
Right.
I think that was a mistake to advise them to file for conditional use. Under our code, conditional uses can be granted for mini storage in an I-1, I-2, towing services in an I-1, I-2, auto sales in a B3, home occupations type A and type B, so if you have a home-based business, skill-based amusement arcades, and freestanding wind turbines.
And what?
Freestanding wind turbines.
Okay.
So those are the 6 reasons you can grant a conditional use permit. So it was should not have been guided towards that process. The letter I sent to their attorney last week, I said this shouldn't have been guided to that process. I would recommend that it gets denied just because it's not under the text of the statute. Because it was our mistake for recommending it, or one of the city officials' mistakes for recommending it, I said we'd refund their application fee. What I also indicated was that we believe, based on how they were, based on the legal arguments I think they were trying to make about continuing the use of the motel, that they're looking at a motel-based zoning. Motels are allowed under a B3 zoning. This is currently a B2 zoning. So I put in my letter to the attorney last week that if that's the route they wanted to go, it would be an application for a rezone. That's under Chapter 1256, and we've gone through that process many times recently, and to go from a B2 to a B3. There's also a process if there was a non-conforming use. So if a motel's operating there historically and it's not in the zone properly, B2, that's called a non-conforming use. So they can legally try to apply for a continuation of the non-conforming use, and that's a separate procedure, and it's under 1290. I laid all that out to the attorney last week. So to say we didn't guide them, I mean, I know it's recent, but we did tell them which way we thought they needed to go.
So they have counsel.
They have counsel. Counsel and I have spoken by phone. We've exchanged letters. Counsel believed, their legal counsel believed that they had, he was pointing to the Summit County Fiscal Office website for verification of zoning. That's not verification of zoning. That was a tax basis for how the property's taxed, and we discussed that. So I know their attorney's out of town currently, but that was that was our communications to date. So just because our code doesn't allow it, for all the reasons everyone spoke for and against it, I appreciate all the passion. Our code doesn't allow it to be a conditional use. There is a procedure they can follow. I think we would still be willing to refund the application fee back because that was a mistake. But I would recommend, as legal counsel, to deny just for that basis.
So, just from my point of view, all right, I work at Summit County Juvenile Court. I see the effects of drug and alcohol abuse every day. I see it as it affects kids. This is a problem that's all over the place. It is everywhere. I'm sorry, folks. It's in your neighborhood. Hate to tell you, it is. I believe that legally we cannot allow the conditional use because it does not fit. I would encourage Safe Harbor to apply through the proper permitting, and whether that's for a rezone or for a continuation of a non-conforming use, that's up to you and your lawyers. Okay. I would say that we need treatment facilities and we need safe, sober living. I know people never want it in their own neighborhood, right? They never want it in their own neighborhood, but whose neighborhood are you going to put it in? I mean, if you don't put it in, it's got to be somewhere, folks. These people are just trying to have a second shot at life. That's what they're trying for. We've all made mistakes. We've all made mistakes. So, I mean, I'm going to vote to deny this conditional use only because I think it's the improper thing under the law. And then we'll take a look at it again when you guys come back through, which I assume you will. I would hope that the city refunds their filing fee if they were guided wrongly. I will say this. Technically, you know, if you got lawyers, use your lawyers. I mean, you know, they should tell you what you need to apply for. That's all I have to say on it. Is there any other discussion regarding this?
Mr. Kern, I just have
Yes,
a question.
Mr. Tousley. Mhm.
I don't know if Mr. Markey can answer me. Council, I believe, has the ability to just not act and just let it go. I personally would prefer that other than voting no against someone for something that is not of their own doing, really.
Yeah, so I'll just procedurally, so Planning Commission votes to approve or deny, and then if they approve, that comes to council. Council signs a letter saying, which is what council did, saying we'd like to take a look at this. You're supposed to put on your agenda what you did on the 15th. I can't remember I know Ms. McComber had the date. Whatever the date was, sometime in October, less than 30 days ago. It was October 15th, it was placed on the agenda, and then the code is all this, not the clearest thing ever written. It says you have about 30 days to take a look at that, and you can either vote to approve, modify, or deny. And if you're going to modify or deny, it takes 5 votes. If you don't act, then it's deemed approved, and it goes through. So that's the procedure.
So we have to act.
Yeah, I mean, or if you don't act, to your point, if you don't act, it's deemed approved. So I just so council understands how the procedure works.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Name and address again. Sorry.
Come over to my house.
I
I have club soda and Mark Saffron, 126 Windsor Circle, Aurora, Ohio. Is there a way that our attorney is trying to work to find the right coding? What I'm concerned, or what we're concerned about, is that we come back and it's not the right permitting again. Is there a way that you can defer until we can get the right permitting so that we're at least all trying to work together in this and do the right thing here? We don't know. I mean, we're asking here.
Mr. Markey, do we have to take action? I guess that's what he's asking.
Yes, can you defer
Can they
the
withdraw
action?
it?
Well, they can withdraw, and that's what I recommended to prevent the hearing. And not that I'm saying we wasted anybody's time, I'm not saying we wasted anybody's time, but so as to prevent this, because really the arguments that were being made for and against are irrelevant to the decision that's actually being made, because just because the conditional use doesn't apply.
Right.
But I'm going to look at the code as we're talking just to see.
Okay.
Who would have the authority to withdraw it?
They had provided a legal representative. I know it was in that packet of who was the agent who could act on behalf of the corporation.
We're happy to share the letter that our attorney sent back to Mr. Markey, again, trying to clarify.
Right.
But
and that's been the same issue with the fire chief, and he just wants clarification. We're all just trying to get the right clarification.
If I'm understanding Mr. Markey correctly, we've got just over 30 days that if we don't act, then
It's
out
deemed
of our
approved.
hands.
Yeah.
So
Mr. Fowler?
For the sake of someone speaking for the fire chief who's not able to be here, is actually working, I text the chief. And to be clear, he went out there and was told that it's not under his jurisdiction. So he was told to leave. So he left the first time. So let's be clear.
Who would have?
Hold on. Mr. Fowler?
So the fire chief, at the recommendation of the law director and I, contacted the state fire marshal. The state fire marshal and the fire chief revisited a second time, at which they were told by the applicants that it's a motel. So it's under the auspices. That's when the fire chief said, if you're operating it under a motel, it falls under the auspices of the fire marshal. The target, one of my biggest issues with these individuals has been the moving target. It's a motel. Well, you would have to do this. Well, then we're not going to make it a motel. We're going to do something else. It is my recommendation that you reject this conditional use permit, and we move on from there.
We have never stated, nor will we ever state, that we intend to use this as a motel. And I was clear with the fire chief, as I was with the fire inspector when I met with them at the fire department 2 weeks ago. It is zoned currently, which is the whole issue, as a motel. And so we're in this limbo of, it's not under the city of Norton, it's under the state because it's zoned as a motel. And that was our conversation. What we're trying to, and what the fire chief said to me, as did the fire marshal, go to the city, get the right permitting, and then we could determine whose responsibility it is. We've never said we're operating this as a motel. The permitting we thought we were operating under was as a motel. There's no one living in the motel. That's the frustration or the confusion. We're not trying to be divisive. We're not trying to obfuscate. That's not our intention. Our intention is trying to gain clarity. And whatever you tell us we need to do, we are more than willing and have always been willing to do. So I apologize for the confusion. We're confused.
Ms.
That's
Markey?
why we have an attorney.
Were you able
Yeah,
to
so I
find
just wanted to
anything?
tell you that under the code, just because the question is asked, is there a procedure? You have the 30 days, but there can be a longer period, in parentheses, or a longer period with the consent of the applicant. So if you want to, you can vote tonight with 30 days. If the applicant wants to consent to a longer period, that's allowable, but those are the options.
So the applicant would have to consent if we wanted to do a longer period of time. Well, I mean, what good does that do?
To me, no good, because it's still not listed, right? It's
Right.
still not listed. I think there's still there is a procedure that has to be followed. Like, there's still a procedure available. There's one of two options. One's the rezone. Second is the non-conforming use. Those procedures are available.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Gainer.
if I could.
Mhm.
All of this discussion tonight, all of it, is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. All of this discussion should have been had before anybody was moved into that motel. That's my point earlier. No one should be living in the motel today. Now, if we reverse the planning department's decision, what's going to happen to the people who are living there? I mean, I know what my recommendation would be, but this is a council that has to make that decision. And we have allowed this to go on and on since May. And as Mr. Fowler stated, I hear one thing one time, one thing the next time, one thing from this person, one thing from that person. And all of this discussion, every last word of it, should have been held before they moved anybody in May. And you can't tell me, these people cannot tell me that they did not know that they needed permits of any kind before you move people in. Why did you move anybody in without a permit or without knowing what kind of a permit you needed? If you don't know today what kind of permit you needed, how could you possibly have thought you could move in with no permits? It's just ridiculous. I don't even think of the words that I'd like to use to describe the operation, that the way it's being run and the way it might possibly be run in the future. I recommend, or I make a motion, or whatever I have to do to turn down the application for conditional zoning permit. I make that motion,
All right, there's a motion to deny resolution number CUP 3-2019. There's a motion and a second to deny resolution number CUP 3-2019. Is there any further discussion? We either have to do it here, or, I mean, I would imagine it's here.
It's going to be a voice vote regardless. It's not going to be.
Yeah, whether it's here.
Right. Can it be made during the public hearing section versus regular council, I guess is my question.
I don't think it matters.
I don't think it matters, and
Just a-
but it's up to for the council president.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just as.
You can adjourn the public hearing.
If it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it anywhere else on the agenda.
Yeah.
Before you do anything
So-
with this, I just wanted, I keep hearing hotel, motel, but it seems to me that where the people are actually living is a residence and not under anything. That's my concern, is they have 15 people living in a house that was very, very unlikely it was
and
built for 15 people.
I did have, several conversations with their attorney, and I think the underlying, whatever the underlying zoning needs to be, right? I think the argument is, and I really want to get into both sides of the legal arguments right now, that there's a pre-existing use, and they feel like they're continuing the pre-existing use, right? And there's a procedure for that. That's my point. There's a procedure to follow if you want to take that line of argument, and that's fine. That's allowed under the zoning code. You just have to follow the right procedure, and you have to demonstrate that there was a non-conforming use, and that it was continued. I mean, that's what it is, and I think their attorney is well aware of that.
If that's the case.
Hold on just a
if
second.
they feel that they're using as a pre-existing use, are they being paid nightly for the motel?
That's what I'm saying. I don't really want to get into all that, right? Because all I'm telling you is I think that's what their attorney had told me, right? That it was a pre-existing use and they were continuing that use. So based on that conversation, I took it to mean there's a non-conforming use and you're continuing the non-conforming use. So that's why the letter, and I'll put the letter in the record so that everyone can see it. I mean, we laid it out clearly what the options were and why we were going to deny, just for the limited reason. No arguments for, no arguments against. It's just not in the zoning code.
If I could add one little thing. Ms. Whipke did ask, she brought up the question about the number of people living in the facility, and I'll just say it's a similar size housing to what I saw when I was in college, and dormitory style, all male, and we had 24 men in our house with plenty of room. So it's not really so much the size of the house, like a regular house with 3 bedrooms.
That was
We're
probably a
looking at
log
pretty good
cabin,
size.
wasn't it?
It's a pretty good size facility, and they've got it in bunk beds and a couple kitchens. Go there and take a look yourself. It's not cramped.
Is there a way, and I'll go back, and I want to be very clear here. Is there a way we can continue this, ask for an extension, because we don't want to take a stand with our attorney, spend more time and money, come back to you to say, for us to be told, you should have gone this way. We just want to know from the city council, from your government, which path you would prefer us to take. And we will take that path. That's been our desire from day one.
That's what Mr. Markey said. He wrote a letter to your attorney.
With 2 different options. If there's...
It's based on your arguments. I don't mean to interrupt. Go ahead, finish your statement, then I'll...
And we don't want this to become a legal discussion of opinion. What we'd like to know is if we come with one argument and you say, well, you should have had this other argument, which we're dealing with today, then we come back with that other argument. We would just rather have what is going to please the city of Norton so we're in compliance. We don't want to continue to play, well, what if we do this and what if we do that? As I said, this has never been used as a motel, but the duplex is zoned with the motel property. That's part of our issue. And then the cottage and the yellow house are zoned differently. So we have four buildings, 2 of which are zoned one way and 2 of which are zoned another way. So my concern is we're going to come back and we still have 2 separate parcels. please just give us some direction, give us an extension so that we can work with you to come with the right determination. That's all we're asking for. Thank you.
Mr. Towsley, did you?
I was just going to ask Mr. Saffron a question. Under what direction did you proceed the way you did to begin with, why you're here tonight, to go before the Planning Commission?
We were told by your planning, by Bill Brahman, we received a letter stating that we have a cease and desist, or we can file for conditional use. I can go back and pull all those records. Within 4 days, we came back to you with a conditional use. You've seen the manual that we put together. You've all seen that information. And as of Wednesday, we were told that was the wrong option, which is my concern and my partner's concern, is that we go back in with our attorney, which is $350 an hour with our attorney. And this is a nonprofit. We're going to be asking for donations as soon as our 501c3 comes in. And that we then come back to you and, well, you know, you should have gone in this direction. Please just tell us which direction going. That, hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, and I certainly understand your frustration. I think that's generally people's frustration with government, is nobody knows what nobody's doing. And I have a lot of compassion for you as far as that goes. And I don't know exactly what our solution is going forward, but I would ask that both sides would work with each other. And
I called two phone calls and the letter, and we've exchanged emails with their attorney. Not once was I asked, and I'm not arguing about, so I wasn't asked what zoning should we take. I said, here are the options. I was told the different arguments that were available to them, but I wasn't asked, what do you think it should be? You know, I mean, that's
what do you think it should be?
Well, you have to tell me what you're doing.
But here's part of the problem.
One version of it.
So here's part of the problem. I don't know that it's really up to us to give you legal advice. That's up to your lawyer to give you legal advice. That's the first thing, okay? We already went that route, and here we are, right?
Correct.
So
We're just looking for the right permitting, so we can apply for that right permit. Our attorney will talk to your attorney, and we're going to keep going around this catch.
Well, and it sounds to me like they've had discussions.
I've not been told this is what we believe it is, and we're going to apply for this. And I've been told different arguments. I've been told you're discriminating. I've been told all different things that.
Well, I mean, this isn't about
different arguments.
This
right?
isn't
It's
about
different
discriminating.
arguments
This is about that the conditional use doesn't fit. It doesn't fit.
We understand that.
I mean, that's, it's not about
President,
discriminating.
isn't there
Mr. Gaynor?
Motion on the floor.
Hold on. Go ahead.
David Wells, 216 Moore Road. Do you have our attorney's response to your letter?
I don't have it with me. I can read it, though.
I think that's what states the confusion that we're trying to resolve. We're not trying to be facetious or difficult in any manner. But like Mark said, we've got two different parcels zoned differently. And
well, the zoning's not different. He's looking at the fiscal office website, which isn't zoning, that's tax classification. So he wasn't looking at the right place for the zoning. The zoning of the property is based on the official tax map of the city, and the zoning is B2. And so he was looking at the residential parcel, which showed an R, which means it's tax residential, and then the commercial parcel, which was the motel, which is labeled C, which is a commercial parcel. That's tax basis, not zoning.
Okay.
So,
all right.
And I explained that to him when I called him on Wednesday.
So here's the thing. We're going around in circles. We've talked to this and talked to this. Mr. Gaynor, I think you've called for the question. Is that what you were doing just now? Asking for the vote?
Yes.
All right. There's a motion and a second to deny resolution number CUP 3/2019. Would the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes, deny.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carrot?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
I believe our hands are tied. Hopefully we can move forward.
understand.
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Like Mr. Towsley said, and I would look for your money to be refunded, yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. All right. I now declare the public hearing closed.
Now, just add that I'm happy to continue to work with Mr. Clements, their
I
attorney, and
fully expect that
Right.
the city will work with you. Again, my vote tonight is based upon that this doesn't fit. That doesn't guarantee what I'm going to vote in the future. But tonight, it means it doesn't fit. Okay.
Mr. Markey, if I could, what legally now happens to the residents that are in this motel?
we're not going to get in that right now, Mr. Gainer.
Yeah.
So they're allowed to stay?
We're not going to get into it right
That's,
For another day.
we'll talk about that another day. All right, introduction of new legislation, ordinance number 123, 2019, Ms. Whipke.
I can't see anymore. Thank you, Mr. President. I introduced ordinance 123, 2019 for its first reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
The annual appropriation ordinance for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Norton for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency.
First reading only.
Thank you. Ordinance number 121, 2019 falls to me. I offer ordinance number 121, 2019 for its second reading and ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the administrative officer to execute and deliver a real estate purchase and sale agreement and declaring an emergency.
And Mr. Fowler, what's this property for 121? Is this over on?
I think it's the industrial park. 121 should be the industrial park. That would be. Hold on, just give me 1 second.
Yeah,
just give me a second. Yes, industrial park, Pettit Auto Wash.
Pettit,
It'll
okay.
be Mr. Pettit. It'll be track number 3.
Okay.
Track number 2 of our industrial park at Fairland and Eastern.
Okay, and I know that there were some maps that were supplied. I believe, Mr. Towsley, you had asked for some information. Were you satisfied with that?
Yes, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
Perfect.
Kind of just to put it in the record that they now are part
Right.
of the ordinance.
Perfect.
And just to be clear, can I just
Go ahead.
interject one thing? Mr. Towsley had asked for a parcel number, and with this parcel, because we haven't completed the transaction, I don't want to split the property off until this potential buyer does their due diligence. So we won't get a parcel number until like a week before we close, because once we are notified that they are satisfied with their due diligence process, we will file the lot split at the county, at which point we would get a lot number or a parcel number. So the reason
I appreciate the explanation.
the reason we can't give you a parcel number, and I don't want to split it off without the sale being complete,
Right.
because then we'd have to reconfigure it together. So I wanted to make sure that you understood why I could not
Yes,
provide
thank you very much.
It's my opinion that there's no reason that we can't just go ahead and waive the third reading tonight and move this contract on so we can get this rolling. Is there any objection to that from anyone?
I guess I would.
You would?
Only because I know residents that I represent think it's going another reading and they're not here tonight.
Okay. Any other discussion regarding that? Mr. Fowler, what are your thoughts about that?
I think I was going to ask Justin if we could allow them to start their due diligence under the presumption that it'll pass at the next reading, because they have 90 days once the process is passed.
Yes, we can do an access letter that basically says they'll identify the.
So we can start that process. That would be the only reason that I would even ask.
To suss out what he's saying.
December and January for 3 months.
The purchase agreement allows them to access the property and do due diligence and sets out all those parameters. We'll just have a little short letter that says
Giving
prior
them
to the
access.
agreement, you're allowed to come on and here are the terms and conditions of that.
Okay.
And we
All
have
right.
that already for other properties.
Okay,
So we
well
can-
then we'll just go ahead and let it go for the second reading, and then we'll do that so that they can start their due diligence. All right.
Before the weather gets too crappy.
Yeah, there is that. It's snowing now, I think, yeah. Ordinance number 122, 2019 falls to me. I offer ordinance number 122, 2019 for its second reading and ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the administrative officer to execute and deliver a real estate purchase and sale agreement and declaring an emergency.
Right, and this is the property for the, down on Barber, or down in that area?
The old
Bark
Mungo
Mill.
property,
The
if
Mungo
someone
property.
would know that.
Okay. Can we waive, or can this go for a third reading? Does anyone have a problem with this one, waiving this one? All right. I'll move to waive the third reading of ordinance number 122, 2019. There's a motion and a second to waive the third reading. Any discussion regarding waiver? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
I move to adopt ordinance number 122, 2019. Motion and second to adopt. Is there any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Ordinance number 113, 2019. Ms. Whipke?
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance 113, 2019 for its third reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance declaring the improvements to certain real property within the city to be a public purpose, describing the public improvements to be made to directly benefit such parcels, exempting such improvements from ad valorem real property taxation, requiring the owner of the improvements to make service payments in lieu of ad valorem real property taxes, and establishing a municipal improvement tax increment equivalent fund for the deposit of the service payments in lieu of ad valorem property taxes, all pursuant to sections 5709.40, 5709.42, and 5709.43 of the revised code, and declaring an emergency.
This is for the Barber Road property, correct? 2661, the old, red pepper?
The TIF for the red pepper.
TIF for that. At this time, I motion to adopt ordinance 113, 2019.
I'll second.
Motion is second for adoption. Is there any discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 114, 2019. Ms. Whipke?
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance 114, 2019 for its third reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance declaring the improvements to certain real property within the city to be a public purpose, describing the public improvements to be made to directly benefit such parcels, exempting such improvements from ad valorem real property taxation, requiring the owner of the improvements to make service payments in lieu of ad valorem real property taxes, and establishing a municipal improvement tax increment equivalent fund for the deposit of the service payments in lieu of ad valorem real property taxes, all pursuant to sections 5709.40, 5709.42, and 5709.43 of the revised code, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is for the TIF for the new Dollar General store down in the Loyal Oak area.
Okay.
This time, I motion to adopt ordinance 114, 2019.
I'll second.
Motion is second to adopt 114, 2019. Any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 115, 2019. Ms. Whipke?
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance 115, 2019 for its third reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property from the Summit County Land Reutilization Corporation and declaring an emergency.
This is for the old AP gas station, and to acquire that and get on with cleaning up that area. At this time, I motion to adopt ordinance 115, 2019.
I'll second.
There's a motion, a second, to adopt ordinance number 115, 2019. Any further discussion?
Yes, I guess, when would they start doing something with AP? Yeah, would it probably be the spring now with the weather?
So I will follow up with Mr. Bravo. We had a conference call a couple weeks ago. I don't know that they have secured the funding as of yet.
Okay.
Once they secure the funding, this is just to cover any matching funds that would be required for the grant.
Okay.
So,
We probably won't see that until spring then.
yeah, I would guess it'd be at
Okay.
least spring.
And my understanding also is that this is for up to $25,000, and Once that's taken care of, we can then offer that property for redevelopment and recapture that money. Is that correct?
That is the intent. We would offer it for sale for the amount of money that we have in the property.
Okay, all right. Any further discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Public service announcements. Mayor Zita.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would just like to announce, keep in mind, we've got Christmas in the Park again this year. It'll be Saturday, December 7th. It's time to start planning lighting ceremonies, and like I said, we need everybody's help. We're looking for any Norton businesses, organizations, families, churches, or anyone who just loves Christmas to come out and decorate a tree in Columbia Woods Park. If you can't do a tree, there's displays. You want to put a display up, wooden cutouts, lighted displays, blow up decorations. The list is endless. Also, please keep in mind we do have the memory tree that we planted this past spring. And so if you want to bring an ornament to put out on the tree in memory or for a loved one, you can do that as also, and we'll get that started at that same time. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public service announcements, Mr. Messner?
Mr. President, just to announce that there will be an informational meeting concerning the Wolf Creek watershed, November 26, 6 to 8 p.m. in the community center.
Thank you.
Public is invited.
Thank you. Any further public service announcements? Under new business, review of the 2020 budget. Mr. Messner.
Mr. President, due to the length of the hour, and I see everybody's falling asleep or almost asleep.
And the fact that we have an executive session after this.
Exactly. So here's what I'm going to do. One thing I want to correct very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
If on your expense side, if you'll look at page I believe it's 51. If you look at page 50, for some strange reason, and I don't know what happened, but not only did it print out page 27, it also printed out the 2019 at the top. So it should be the 2020 budget at the top. And
oh, this is the additional one we got. Okay,
right.
All right.
It is correct. Just mark it 2020, and it should be 51 of 63 or 64.
Okay. Yeah, because I was looking all over for this.
Yeah, 27. I mean, I don't know how in the world it happened that way. The other thing that I was going to do tonight, and I'm going to forego it, but I'm going to tell council. I've given you all the table of contents with last year's, this year's, plus or minus. You see there's more minuses than pluses, and a few of the pluses are just a few dollars. But what I would ask council to do so that we can keep the budget hearings going is to look at your pluses, go to that page, and you can very quickly skim down the 2020 budget line, and you'll see there's very few items that have gone up. They're very apparent what they are. And if you have questions, please email me, or we can certainly discuss them next week. But I think the plan is, Mr. Fowler, next week, we're hoping to have the 3 department heads in.
Two
department heads.
Mr. West will be on vacation, but
okay.
Yeah. Okay. The intent's to do as much as we can next week.
We will.
And I'll do as much as I can standing in for Mr. Hess if that helps us expedite the budgeting process.
We will.
And I can also assist with that because I've worked very closely with him. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Messner. Any other public service announcements? All right. We were already there. We were doing the 2020 budget. Is there any question before we move into executive session? All right, next week we will, under the work session, we'll be working on the budget. that will be what we'll be doing. So keep that in mind.
Joe, I was going to
Yes.
say,
Mhm.
since we didn't get a lot done, I'm willing to come in a little bit early if we need to next Monday. I mean, I'm always willing to do that. We're good? Okay.
good?
I'm just,
Yeah, I think if council looks for the first part anyways, the big concern is police, fire, and
Right.
service. Those are your big three.
Okay.
The other ones, not that they're not important, but they're, I think you can see from how I've done it, that'll point out exactly what's what.
Well, and again, I would encourage council members, as they're going through this, if they have questions, please reach out ahead of time.
Yep, please do.
So that you can discuss those. And it doesn't mean it's, we can certainly discuss it on the floor, but at least we're not
Right.
hashing all of that out.
And I
during
have
the
got
meeting.
questions and have answered, and I'm perfectly willing to sit with anybody that wants to come in and sit with me as well.
Very good. That's what we will do then. All right. Having said that, anything else on the budget? All right. We will be moving into executive session to consider the purchase, transfer, or sale of property for public purposes as defined in ORC 121-22G2 and Section 3122 of the Norton City Charter, and conferences with an attorney for the city concerning disputes involving the city that are the subject of pending or imminent court action as defined in Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G3 and Section 3.123 of the Norton City Charter, and the compensation of public employees as defined in ORC Section 121.22G1 and Section 3.121 of the Norton City Charter. I hereby make a motion to move into executive session. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor? Mr. McClone?
yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
All right, I would invite Mr. Fowler, Mayor Zita, Mr. Messner, and Mr. Markey. Please keep in mind that while we're in executive session, the audio and video is recording live and uninterrupted. If you do not want your conversations recorded, please exit the council chambers. Council will not be taking any further legislative action when we come back. We are in executive session.
You keep on getting that after ID.
What that? I just changed my, screw it. I tried using the one he gave me, it never worked.
You tried changing what?
You mean
Or,
whatever
I mean-
app ID? I thought it was this one he gave me, I could never get it to work. So I just went and changed the app ID myself.
What was it?
I just changed it to the one I wanted to change it to. I don't know if that was right, but that's the only way I could get things going. This is what I thought it was right here, was this.
A double secret resolution after executive session. Double secret.
Snoots.
I was gonna ask Joe, but he's gotten good about letting me know ahead of time.
Yeah, we're not doing anything. No.
This is the one he gave me. It's photos. This is,
I'm going to try really hard.
this is the one he gave me. Largen,
I know.
0 RTON, large C, OUNC, 1 explanation.
Well, I won't.
No, L, if I can get it to work.
Unfortunately, through my minutes.
You can write it down, but it
I'll
ain't
see what I
gonna
can
work.
do, but
Take a picture of it. I mean, that's what he gave me.
Freaking process. And we outlined it.
That's, I couldn't get it to work.
Yeah, it just keeps popping up.
I know it does. So I went to settings and just changed it to whatever I wanted to get it to work. I don't know if that was the way to do it.
I'm surprised that it let you change it.
It did. I got tired of looking at it. Same here.
See, I'm like, you're at the fiscal office.
Yep, nice meeting
I was
you,
gonna
Joe.
call you and ask
Have a
you,
good night.
but I didn't wanna bother you.
This isn't for publication. This is not a quote. The guy said to me, oh, I don't really do zoning. So.
That's $350 an hour.
He bought it. That's what we talked about with Paul, where he said, our code doesn't say, family equals That's what it's parking complex. Off the record, with myself, guide us if it should be apartment housing. It doesn't matter to us. And then you can then get the fire chief there and involved some people who they can come out and inspect them, because he said I can come out and inspect them. Go back to city council.
When the Hungies hit. Too bad we don't have a red barn. Always liked red barns.
Oh, I have a question I wanted to ask everybody. What are you all doing about swearing in?
McKinney?
McKinney, I hope, or
That's what I respond.
Me too.
you guys, you three people?
Made no difference to me.
I don't care.
You know, Judge Fish is gone, or will be.
Fish.
Judge Fish.
Well, I like them.
I don't
do
care. It
too.
doesn't
I'm
matter to
just
me.
saying.
I don't care about that.
All right, I call the council meeting back to order. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Okay. Drive carefully, everyone.
Was it Judge McKinney that was doing the drug?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Still on.
Excuse me.
Yeah, she's. Oh, I thought she was. Oh, that's fine.